For me, is probably the first time, we had to dip into our emergency savings fund. And like it was there for that purpose, but it is a little bit gut wrenching to say, oh, like these are real responsibilities and these happen. So just, the thought of dipping into that and knowing I need to figure out a way to make it back up. So super thankful that it was there, but I just wasn't prepared for the, the gut punch that it was going to be.
Sure. Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where happiness is more often found in the soul of someone's wealth rather than the size of it. Money, after all, is a tool. It's not the destination. Money is the fuel to advance your core values and purpose. Join us as we share some inspiring stories, true wealth life lessons, and practical strategies to help you design a life of intention, generosity, and fulfillment. Guests on the True Wealth Podcast are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Hey, True Wealth listeners, welcome back to another exciting episode of the True Wealth Podcast. I have two special guests with me today, Luke LaRock and Dylan Rundigan, and it's just really great to have you here. You may wonder why you're here, because these are two associate wealth advisors that do work at Pinnacle Wealth, but they happen to fit the criteria and the definition of what we call launchers, all right? So launchers, I'm going to just read a description. So I'm going to define who you are before we even get going here, and then we'll just elaborate on it. Ages 21 to 30, foundation building, early decisions, and direction. So the description I use for the launchers is the launcher stage is where people move from possibility to responsibility, from theory to practice, and from the world they grew up in to the world they are now beginning to build. This is a decade where early choices carry enormous weight. Careers, relationships, habits, financial decisions, and purpose all begin taking shape. It's exciting, overwhelming, hopeful, and intimidating all at the same time. Launchers define who they are without the structure of family expectations and without the clarity that only time provides. True wealth here is about building a foundation, learning discipline, forming habits, establishing values, discovering purpose, and setting a trajectory that aligns with who they want to become. These aren't the years to get everything right. They're the years to get the most important things started. So that's who launchers are. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. Where'd you go to school? Give the listeners some insight.
I grew up about 30 minutes east of here in Minnesota in a small town called Hills. Yep. Graduated high school there, and then I moved on to South Dakota State University where I studied general economics. And then, I found my way here through Nick Omelet, another advisor of ours. We got connected, and he just started sharing a little bit more about the work that they do at Pinnacle. I became intrigued, and position opened up for me, so the rest was history.
Dylan, how about you?
From a small town, Minnesota, about 3 hours away, Sunburg, Minnesota. Came to Sioux Falls to go to USF, play football. Graduated with 1 degree in 6 years, exercise science degree.
Nice. Did you have that on your resume?
No, I did not.
TBD
on the master.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
But I started here about a little over a year ago now. Was looking for some jobs. I interned at a place my senior year of college and wanted to move on from there, and sent the email to you, and here we are.
Yeah, awesome. So today we want to just explore what it means to be a launcher a little bit. One of you is married, one's going to be getting married. That's going to give us some different perspectives on that. But what was the one thing you wish your parents would have told you, or that they often told you that you now finally understand? Is there one thing that jumps out, stands out?
I think for me, it was just the concept of getting started early. And it's just it's a boring but profound answer yet, and that's just the concept of compound interest over time. And just it may not seem like, a lot of money now or versus, maybe I'll wait a year, maybe I'll wait 2 years and I have some more money to get started. And it doesn't seem like a lot of money now, but you can, use a simple online calculator to, see what that difference is over the long period of time. And that's that they were always pretty good about encouraging those conversations early, like when I was 18 and starting a Roth IRA, for example. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest one there. And then also the other boring answer is just spending less than you make. And
That's the easy
right.
one. Did you know when you went to college that you wanted to get into something financial, or did it just kind of, how did that happen?
Well, I studied with just a general degree in business economics, which is I'll figure it out later kind of major, but I like people, I like numbers. So yeah, I started there, and then I kind of became fascinated with just the overall concept of economics up at college. So I switched my major just to general economics, just because I was fascinated with, how the economic machine runs.
Sure.
And some people are, mechanics are interested in how a car runs. A doctor might be interested in how the human body function and runs. And that for me was just, the economy of the United States and other economies of different countries around the world. So the underlying theory in economics is scarcity. And so that stuck with me, throughout the time that I was there.
Sure.
And I think it applies in spades to the work we do as financial planners and just helping people, allocate what God's been trusted to them in the best way to achieve their goals.
Awesome. Dylan, I would imagine exercise science, financial was not, I just want to hit the weight room, right? We've got to play football.
Yeah. Basically, that was, I liked lifting weights.
Awesome.
That's what it was. I just was interested in school based off of where my parents were and stuff like that. When I got into college, I was just interested in how can I get into a better spot, because obviously you're a poor college kid, and I was just really focused on budgeting and doing stuff like that. And also I was very interested in kind of teaching myself in that regard. It was stimulus to the brain, and it and I don't know, I didn't even know what I didn't know, so I was just trying to consume as much as I could. So
so when you think about the next 5 years, starting household, newly started household, what things excite you? What things scare you? And I'm thinking not about the marriages here. I'm thinking finances. So from that aspect, shed a little light on that. Dylan, go ahead and go first.
Well, with my daughter and stuff, what scares me is some event where, like a health event where we need to pay a lot of money for that.
Yep.
As right now, starting off, we're trying to build that emergency fund and check off all the boxes there. But when you're not quite there, it's pretty scary. If something happens, your car breaks down, whatever, what's going to happen then? So
right. Yeah. Well, again, sometimes our biggest financial fears aren't necessarily what may happen to us, but it's what may happen to others that are very important to us. So kudos for starting that savings plan early. How about you, Luke?
I'd say what excites me is my wife finished up school at the end of last summer. So when you get done with school, most people have student loans to pay off. So I don't view that as, kind of a scary, but it's exciting to kind of calculate out, like, okay, here's what we're required to pay, but if we can add a little bit more to this, how much can that save you over the long term? And now that, we have two incomes in our household, we have a little bit more to work with to pay off some of those loans. So exciting to start chipping away at that burden, that debt. And then for scaring, I'd say just kind of the concept of a growing family too. As Isabel and I begin to plan to grow our family, just those additional line item expenses that come with childcare as we age. We're both 25 now, so eventually we will be 26, and then the health insurance conversation kicks in. So just planning for as if those items were here today in the budget, so we're not knocked off.
I hear I need a raise conversation coming. Ooh, that's not where I wanted to go today, but we'll see how the rest of this goes. So, but when you think about, as a launcher, it's one thing to deal with these decisions alone, but then as a launcher who's newly married or getting married, you got another set of opinions coming in. So what's some of the challenges that can happen, or that you've gone through, and how did you go through them as a couple? And I should have them on here to get balance in this conversation.
To fact check us, But when we first started, I think it's so important just to get that out of the way, and maybe not out of the way, but just to address it early, and just not, because if you don't address it, it's just going to get worse and worse. And then I probably made the mistake of making those conversations about the dollars and the money. And because that's what made sense to me. But really what I should have been focusing on, and eventually where I leaned to, is just what what the perspective of each is and what lens are they viewing it, how does it make them feel, and what do they value more, because we each are valuing different things, and it's not that one is right or wrong.
Right.
They're just different. So understanding that sets the table for more productive conversations around the dinner table.
I think that's the beauty of also being in the industry, because you see that side of it. Otherwise, it really quickly becomes about line items and about preferences. And I had an older gentleman one time, while I was a couple, and gas in the boat was a necessity, but facial cream or makeup was a luxury item. And that was an interesting conversation between this couple, because that was not the way the other spouse saw it. So blending two separate opinions, backgrounds, if you weren't raised the same way, that brings in some additional conversation. How about you, Dylan? Any?
Well, I've taken a lot of advice from those conversations, have those conversations early, because you hear those stats where it's like a very high number of divorces are from money situation, not talking about it. So we've been very intentional with those conversations right away, and we're both kind of big picture people. So if you can tie the saved dollars to a goal or something in the future, when you're making that sacrifice now, saying one day we can do that, it's kind of you're in it together type thing, and it's more of a team thing. So that's been really awesome. But yeah, I mean, having that early, we were in premarital counseling, like our second session, and the gal was like, I've never seen somebody this high aligned with finances out of a couple with all the time we've been doing it. So that was pretty cool to hear that the work we've put in to establish that right away has paid off. So
and if you keep that dialogue open, and it needs to be, again, not I need you to see my point, and it's not a convincing of the other partner in this. But it's one, first learning their philosophies. How did they, was money tight for them when they grew up? Was it not? Different views between couples on, are we going to pay for our children's education? One may have had it taken care of for them, and the other one didn't. So those are great conversations to start off early in any new relationship. So here's a kind of an interesting one, I guess. When did it hit you that you were now an adult? I mean, college is a different period of time. There should be still an element of being an adult in college. Arguably, I guess. That could be a whole different separate podcast. But I mean, you graduate, and now all of a sudden, real world. It's now I got to get up, I got to go to work, I got responsibilities. When did that first hit you?
For me, is probably the first time, we had to dip into our emergency savings fund. And like it was there for that purpose, but it is a little bit gut wrenching to say, these are real responsibilities, and these happen. So just, the thought of dipping into that and knowing I need to figure out a way to make it back up. So super thankful that it was there, but I just wasn't prepared for the, the gut punch that it was going to be to draw those funds out.
How about you, Dylan?
Right away, well, one that stuck out to me was signing up for the 401k, like enrolling into that. I was
Welcome to big boy pants time.
Yeah. But I think a cool one was like when signed on we bought a house last year, and going through that, it was pretty cool. But like realizing like if something went wrong, like that's up to me to fix. I can't just call down and be like, hey, what's going on? I can, but like I got to fix that. You know what I mean? You're not on your own, but you're on your own. It's yours. Right. And that was the first big thing that I've ever had that's mine. So it's like,
well, that's the one thing about a launcher, that now all of a sudden it's like you said, it's your responsibility. It's not, the challenger stage. You may be pushing back on some of the things that have been taught you, or you're seeing an inconsistency of something your parents may have been trying to teach you, and yet they're doing it different themselves. But now launcher's your deal. Well, yeah, that's one of the first things of, welcome to adulthood. But was there anything else in particular that you weren't prepared for when it's like, okay, now I'm on my own? Home repairs probably would be yours still, but anything else that jumps out?
That I wasn't prepared for. Yeah. Probably like the FOMO of things for people who aren't aligned with you. Like you said, we both have families and are starting families, and it's you can't do what other people are doing. You hear about that trap of social media where you're seeing everybody's highlight reel, and they're all people are out vacationing, doing their thing, whatever. But
so if your old O-line is going out and doing those things, not doing
can't
that.
do that anymore. So
but you can do it, just not as often.
Right.
Okay. If you could snap your fingers, either one, I mean, both of you can respond to this too, but if you could snap your fingers and remove one financial stress, what would that be?
Probably just student loans.
Student loans.
Just
it's
poof, gone.
that's massive. I mean, I just think back to my launchers at the time. I think I still have one that's a launcher. I got to do the math here real quick, but most of them have moved to other stages. But just the difference between my oldest and youngest going to the same school was significant. Just the starting dollar amount. I mean, you're talking about 100,000 versus 50,000. Actually, more than that, just between that short period of time.
Yeah.
So
and it's not that they're evil. I think they're just to be viewed as an investment of sorts too.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm mad that it's this amount. It's
Right.
just how do we pay that off now
Absolutely.
and make sure that investment can pay off in other ways.
And you got to have a plan. You got to attack it. So you're doing it the right way. But yeah, I would think there's so many things you'd like to also get into as a couple, but that is kind of hanging there that you need to.
And that gets into the FOMO conversation too, where it's like, oh, if I didn't have these student loans, I could be, saving this amount to go do something else. And that's where I think a lot of people fall into that trap of just, giving into that and then maybe not paying as much of those off, or maybe sacrificing other planning areas to go do those things when they don't have that foundation set.
How about you, Dylan? House payments gone? No, what would yours?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got a pretty good rate with the first-time
you
home
did sign
buyer
at a good
in
time.
South Dakota.
Yeah,
Grants for grads or whatever. So I'd probably say student loans too.
sure.
So yeah, I mean, like you said, it's not to be all cliche, but it's kind of when you're talking about the FOMO, it's like choose your hard type thing.
Yep.
Are you gonna sacrifice now, or are you gonna pay student loans when
Totally.
you're 40?
Yeah.
So,
Totally. Well,
No.
that's one thing I've always appreciated about
Right.
both of you is a level of maturity. But hopefully we can shed some of that on there as well. But along those same lines, let's go back to growing up. What did you learn about money from your family? Anything stand out? Learn or didn't learn? Either way, you can take either approach on that. Whoever wants to go first.
yeah, we kind of joke about it now. My mom will say sometimes, "Don't do what we did." So I guess I learned through the experience. My parents had me when they were very young and went to college with me. So they just kind of started at a disadvantage and had to work really hard to get out of paying for a lot of
Sure.
stuff and taking on a lot of debt right away to prop up the family. So, which isn't a bad thing, but
No, great life lessons in there.
yeah.
But
but they just how they handled some of that stuff, which you got to go through life to figure that stuff out, and they taught me by going through it. So
awesome.
yeah.
Luke, anything in your situation?
Yeah, I guess I'd kind of go back to, just those very simple but powerful concepts of compound interest, and then just spending less than you make. And the only way to, do that second one is to know what you are earning and know
Right.
what you're spending and to track it. You can't just, throw out numbers.
Well, I'm
each
always
month.
amazed, and I watch that in some of my own kids, but I watch young people today. I was shocked when my youngest needed to I don't know if it was when he bought his house or what, but they said, well, just write out a check. And the initial look of panic on his face was like, I've never written a check out, and almost looking at me like, Dad, how do I do this? I was embarrassed that I hadn't really taught that. And I guess I assumed that was taught somewhere in the system, but it really isn't. And that's generationally different, because that was like a badge of honor to me, was to have a checkbook. Now it's a little card you just wave, and they don't monitor. Some people do, because you actually get a much more detailed report available to you that you can, and analytics, besides having to re-enter what you may have written out in a checkbook. So it is really a much more efficient system, but I think that convenience without discipline, can take you down a really, really bad route.
Yeah, I think with not just kind of tapping the card, doing whatever, makes it kind of hard. You know how they say, like, look, you got to look at the man in the mirror type thing? You got to look at your bank account
Yep.
and, like, go through it, budget it all. And when you're just tapping and kind of trying to do a mental accounting, like, that was $10 there.
Well,
I think
I've
it's
even
really
have
hard
some
to
people, they'll
look
say,
at that.
well, I got money in my account, and they just keep hitting it, and
Yeah.
they see the balance, but they're not thinking of, oh, yeah, I got a car payment that's coming up next month. And so you got to have a plan that matches that spending pattern.
Yeah.
What curiosity, I have my own list, but since I'm asking the questions, I get to do this. What's the dumbest thing you ever spent money on? In your mind, I guess.
I'd say anytime I fell for some marketing gimmick that was, hey, the price is never going to be lower than it is right now. It's $2,000 of value for $200 or something like that. You know, that's all just a gimmick. And I'm sure maybe there's some good stuff out there for it, but I'd say, just the impulsivity of, you know, giving into that just in the moment without doing prior research.
I got years of experience, and I'm supposed to know better, but I sucked into one not that long ago. It was a online post. This gentleman was supposedly making leather bags, and it was a family business. He'd done it for years, and they're going out of business. Well, the bags looked kind of cool, so I bought one. That was 2 years ago, and he's still going out of business making bags because they're going to quit. And I'm thinking, yeah, I sucked in for that thing, and they were high quality, but I spent a little more on that. And it's in my office. I'm not taking it home because my wife was going to go, you needed another bag? No, not really. I just made a dumb investment. You have any? You got to have one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, stupid decisions in college, buying stuff, but kind of on the funnier side, I guess. My first ever sports bet, I won. So
Dangerous.
it was, Christian McCaffrey and T. Higgins anytime touchdown score. And I won, so I was like, this is an easy way to make money. And I kind of have an addictive personality, so I started, you know, you start wasting money on that when it's like, all that money could have been in a Roth IRA, you know. So
Absolutely. Well, go back to Christian McCaffrey. I really, as a Hawkeye fan, just nightmares to me
PTSD.
because I should have probably bet on him. First play of the game, I remember that bowl game, he just scanned her down for a touchdown immediately, and my heart was ripped out once again. But anyway, we digress. But sports betting, and today it's crazy. I went to a baseball game in San Diego, and I was sitting next to a group. I mean, they bet on every pitch. They were passing dollars back and forth, and they wanted me to play. And I'm thinking, stay out of this game because I got some cash on me, and it's all going in their hands if we can get through it. I had no clue. I mean, it was whether they got a hit, and even then, to where did he hit it? I mean, they were betting on so many. I lost. I was intrigued, but I lost capability to retain all that because they had a lot of stuff going on. But you can bid mid games. It isn't on the outcome of the game. It's on how many carries versus passes versus totally
Everything.
different world to me. And I do think that money's better in a Roth than on those things. But anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted. What were you gonna say?
No, it's the access to it.
Yeah.
So, what skill or strength are you trying to develop now? And it can be just professionally, it can be financially. Feel free to go wherever you want to as a launcher.
For me, I'd say just on the personal development side, you know, going through the Certified Financial Planner, the CFP, and the Certified Kingdom Advisor, CKA materials. And then just the other skill is just trying to develop a more consistent morning routine too. I've been, very, very bad at that as of the last couple months. So just trying to get that back on track.
Perfect. Anything for you, Dylan?
Yeah. We've been.
You're going through. I know you're going through a professional. And I'm embarrassed. I can never remember this. I
TPCP.
conveniently forget just because I like you telling me what it is again. So you're going through
the TPCP.
And that stands for?
Tax Planning Certified Professional.
Awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
You're really close to getting that completed. But beyond that, I didn't mean to pigeonhole you there.
Yeah.
Feel free to elaborate.
Just keep getting into the taxes with the arrangement we have going and stuff like that. I really want to like I said before, I'm kind of have an addictive personality. So once I get locked onto something, it's got to keep just going and going and going. So that and what we've been talking about a lot with a group of guys that we kind of just get together and to better ourselves and whatnot. We've been talking about getting uncomfortable with our generation. It's pretty easy to just sit on your phone or even at work, sit in the office and not talk to anybody. So just getting out of my comfort zone and striking up conversations with people and
awesome.
Both in the office
because we are
and
missing
outside.
that. I've talked about that in several other episodes that I'm embarrassed even sometimes my wife and I go out to eat and we are that couple where we both have our phones out and we're talking to other people and then we really haven't engaged in each other with conversation, and that's kind of sad, but that's the conveniences of the today, I guess. But yeah, I had so many good questions. Oh, we talked about the dumbest thing you ever spent money on. What's the best thing you ever spent money on?
Not sure if I can think of a best, but I mean, anytime you buy like a book that you really wanted to read, like I always think that's good, whether it's a personal development book or just another book that you were interested in. But then I think the key thing too is to not make it solely entertainment, and that if you don't apply what it's saying in the book, then you're just entertaining the idea of that, you know.
Right.
So I think that's
I have a lot of those on my shelf.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, I think it's the flip side of that. It's smart in the sense that if you can apply what it's throwing down.
Got any, Dylan, in your?
Yeah, I hope Brooke hears this. That diamond ring.
Yeah.
Good answer. Yeah. Wow, get that right.
I changed my answer.
Yeah. I was gonna say trendsetter, but I figured go with the diamond ring.
Well, we'll explore what and who trendsetter is.
That's for a different conversation.
That's a different conversation.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
So are there things, sometimes, and then this can work both ways, because I know when I was younger, if I had a friend who was in a career of selling vacuums, just using that as an example, it was kind of like, don't ever ask them about a vacuum, because it's, they're going to write it. Our approach is a little bit different than that, but are there certain things that your peers or people that will come to you and ask you about, how are you doing this? Or is there things that jump off of that? Or is it kind of like, oh yeah, don't talk to them about this? I'm curious. So we really haven't had this conversation, but I'm curious of what friends, if they're approaching you, what they're asking you.
I'll get some just random questions, like the stock's hot right now. Should I buy this or whatever? And it's like, that's not what we do. But
right.
So they're
looking for hot tips, basically.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. Since I've been helping more with like tax prep and stuff like that, I've been getting a lot of those questions, not even from peers, but older people that just know I'm doing that.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of questions people don't know.
Right.
And just a lot of small things people don't know. I'd say just even like just questions like that, like life insurance questions, all that stuff.
Well, taxes is one of those things. That's kind of I used to always say, you can make more money, but it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's really what the government allows you to keep, what they haven't taxed. So managing and understanding, we all have a responsibility of paying taxes. But the code is written because it's your legal right to pay a minimum amount. So avoidance would get you 5 to 10, and that's not what we're talking about. But being responsible and managing taxes, it's the one. It's not a table stake anymore. It's the one thing that really can move the needle if you're becoming more tax efficiency. So kudos to you to see that at a young age. But it is. And it's not going to get any better, unfortunately. The government's getting further in debt, and they've got to raise money somehow. So they're going to figure out where they're getting a little crafty nowadays is they're trying to figure out how to raise tax revenue without raising taxes, because that's a negative taboo. And they're getting a little better at it, which is kind of in a whole nother side conversation. But yeah, I guess we've covered a lot of different things. I'd love to have you guys back on. I'm sure there's going to be more things. We'll do this before you get to the next stage. Although Jugglers isn't too far away for both of you. But what is the one thing that you would want all launchers to know? As a launcher that's in the industry, so to speak, what's one thing that you would want them to take away from today's show? You can come up with 2.
There we go.
Sorry, put you on the spot. Is there one thing that jumps out that you're thinking?
In the financial services industry, or just any launcher?
You can go either way with it, but just something that would appeal to a launcher listener, or to the parent of a launcher, or to someone who's about to get into that phase. What's one thing you'd want them to take away?
I'd say it kind of goes back to the check conversation, and that there's been a handful of times where I'll ask my mom and dad like a question on something, and they'll look at me like I was born yesterday, just like, what? Like, you don't know that? I'm like, no, I don't know that. But then, friends will ask me the same thing or a similar question, and I'll do the same thing, which I probably shouldn't be doing that. We should probably treat those with more grace. But just the idea that don't be afraid to ask questions that you're truly wondering, and if they're a silly question, it's okay and it's normal. It happens to everybody.
Well, the industry or even the system, the education system, really doesn't, unless you take specific courses. Sometimes they'll assign, but then they're almost so generic and so basic. And really, at the time, I do remember early on when I started as a financial advisor, Stewart's School of Hairstyling had me come out and talk to some of their graduating stylists at that time about finances and literally you could tell it was like, are you serious? I mean, they looked at me like almost glazing over. It's like, I just want to get my degree and get me out of here. But it was amazing to me how many of them actually came back later and said, I wish I would have listened a little better when you were speaking at that time, or I remember you saying this, and now the reality of having to make these decisions, their questions were better. That doesn't mean we shouldn't still have that conversation, but the system really does not educate people from that standpoint. We just kind of let them bump their knees and figure it out on their own. But
because some of the stuff is just too boring to even teach someone, so they're not going to pay attention anyway. So the only way to know where it's at is to bump your knee on it, and then
pain is one of the better teachers. Unfortunately, we remember that and we learn from it. But Dylan, do you have anything that you would want to make sure launchers would learn?
Yeah, it's a great time to have fun and whatever, but not to be intense. But every decision matters right now.
Yeah, being responsible.
Yeah, have your fun and whatnot, but know that making the decision to go do things that won't help you in the future are only going to set you back. One small decision.
Let me go back to a couple other things. I was going to kind of wrap things up, but a few other great questions pop into my head. Were you guys put on a budget when you were? I'm going to go back to Challengers, or when you were younger. Were you given a budget? Did you have an allowance? Did you have to buy your own things? That may be different. I don't know. I've never asked either one of you that, but I'm just curious.
Because my family, we were very involved in sports. We could only work in the summer.
Oh, sure.
And then a little bit maybe in the winter.
Sure.
After wrestling and whatnot. But so it was like gas, that stuff. My parents will handle that because they wanted me to pursue sports and because I liked it. But like as far as going out with friends, buying clothes that I wanted, not needed, and stuff like that, use your money. If you don't have it, you're not doing it. That thing. So
all right. How about you, Luke? Any different from that?
Yeah, that's probably the same with me. When I was younger, we could work to earn some money too, like for an allowance. Sure. It wasn't just an allowance for just existing either. So we would work for it. But yes, it's similar with sports and only being able to work in the summer.
So
similar.
Do you remember, did you guys get a credit card? And I don't know how that's changed over the years. It used to be, I was humored by that too with my kids. So they got their first credit card and it was this big thing, but they had a limit. You could only spend, I think the initial one was maybe only $100, but it just would train some things. But it always intrigued me that if they spent up to the $100 limit and they could keep making the payments, their limit would get raised. So then they'd get one. You now have $500, and my kids would get excited about that, thinking, "Oh, sweet!" And it's kind of like, yeah, well, that's because they know you can service the debt at 100, and they're giving you more debt. So managing that responsibility can be challenging at times. But did you guys have a credit card, or was it a debit card?
In high school, it was just pretty much a debit card. But then when I got to college, and you take a personal finance class, and they talk about your credit score and things like that. So so I have been operating on a credit card ever since. And the way I do that is it forces me at the end of the month to see exactly what I spent. And then in my mind, I know, is that in line with what I have in my budget versus just pulling from a nest egg of what you have in a checking account. Is just how I personally like to do it. But
because I'm on a personal mission to rechange the term because they call them credit cards, which sounds illustrious, but to me, they're debt cards. When you put money on it, you owe something with that, right? So your ability to be able to pay that off and how you manage debt is probably as equally challenging as how you manage credit or how it gets extended to you.
Yeah.
How about you, Dylan? Did you get a credit card, debit
Same
card?
thing, just a debit card,
Okay.
and got into that Discover student card.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Same.
Well, hey, I want to thank both you guys for being here, being willing to be open and honest and a little bit vulnerable, just sharing kind of your experiences. I think, too, sometimes being able to talk it out in sharing with other listeners the challenges, the obstacles that can come your way, but even more importantly is the opportunities, and getting it right, starting out with a good foundation on something on which you can build and grow is awesome. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the True Wealth Podcast. If you'd like to, you have questions for either one of them as launchers, or if you have ideas for future episodes on questions, just send them to info@pinnaclewealth.com. And we'll either reach out to you directly, or we'll make sure we formulate that into one of our next conversations. So today's sponsor, by the way, so if anybody likes, submits, or follows, or whatever, where they go to listen to their podcast, they have the opportunity to become our non-financial sponsor of the day. So it's Trudy. Trudy is today's sponsor. I just thought I'd share that with you guys.
Nice.
So Trudy,
Thanks,
thank
Trudy.
you for being a sponsor of a non-financial sponsor of the True Wealth Podcast. But make sure you like, you follow, you subscribe, share it with friends, family members, so we can expand the True Wealth Nation, looking for those people who want to experience a life confidently enjoyed on their journey of true wealth. Thank you for listening, because the pinnacle of wealth is true wealth. Thank you. We'll be back soon. Guests on the True Wealth Podcast are not affiliated with CWM LLC. Investment advisory services are offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.